guys, welcome back to part 3. We're talking about church leadership now, and I think this will be a really helpful segment for you to really understand how we function. The first part of church leadership is really imperative. You got to understand how that leadership functions. And the way I'm speaking is not necessarily from a top to bottom thing, as you'll see in the next segment. It's just more so what people do and how they function, not so much as where they function. I really encourage you to tune into the next where we talk about church government so you can see more of how everything's structured. But leadership, let's just start with the pastor. The lead pastor, we call him the lead pastor because he really just leads the other pastoral staff. Vic is only one member of our pastoral staff, and he leads the pastoral staff to assist them in helping them grow their specific ministry. Each ministry is specific. Vic is over connections, and he's trying to bring people into the church and kind of get them assimilated and connected. We have worship leaders. We have children's ministry leaders. We have worship pastors, and all these play an integral part of the church. And the lead pastor just kind of goes along and kind of ministers to these people and just kind of facilitates what they're doing and guides and directs, trying to keep everybody on the same sheet of music. You know how sometimes we sit in staff meetings and we kind of want to pull in different directions. Yeah. And the lead pastor's job is to kind of pull them all back in and say, wait a minute, guys, you know, if we do this, it's going to affect this over here. Exactly. And so that's kind of what the lead pastor does. And lead pastor preaches most of the sermons on Sunday. I don't have to preach all the sermons. You'll see times when Vic preaches, or our youth pastor will preach, or somebody else might bring a message on Sunday morning. But I preach the majority of the messages, and so it's imperative that I'm praying all the time. I have to have a strong prayer life and a strong study time. So I spend a lot of time in study. I spend a lot of time in prayer, seeking God's direction and God's face, and I think that's very, very, very important. And then my job is to equip the saints, you know, and really all of the staff's job is to equip the saints. Kind of speak to that a little bit about equipping the saints, Vic, about how you see that.
Well, I think especially for our church, we've structured it to me in the sense that, you know, in other church structures, it seems like the pastor has got his hand in every little thing, and it takes away from his ability to do what we feel like our pastor at the Revolution's called to, and that is to preach the word, and like I said, to equip the saints. To God lays upon his heart a thing to address at our church, and that's part of, usually turns into a sermon series or something like that, and that is where his gifting is in the opening up the Word of God and just unpacking those truths before God's people. And so that's how we've structured it that way, because we want our pastor to be right in the middle of where God's gifted him.
Yeah, it's seeking God's will and casting the vision, and that means really spending a lot of time in prayer and trying to figure out what God is doing, how He's directing us. And so, you know, we do that, and then we try to communicate that. We have a preaching schedule that we put together throughout the year, and that schedule has different series that we put together. Those series are really designed to move our people in a direction that we need for them to go, so that we're kind of maturing together as a church, and trying to get that vision going so that we're all on the same sheet of music. And I think we've been pretty successful in that over the years, and it's just, we're just getting better at that all the time as God is developing our skill sets in those areas. Another thing that the senior pastor does is he serves as what's called ex officio, and ex officio means that all the different teams and the bodies that we have, the senior pastor or lead pastor, if you will, goes to those meetings, not as a voting member of it, but just to make sure that we don't have one group that's going in a different direction outside of the overall vision. And that's what the ex officio does. He's just there without a vote to kind of just communicate what the overall church vision is all about. And that's an important aspect, because it's really about what we do. And then there's this other thing that just really troubles me. It's one of the things in church work that bothers me in the 21st century. And in the 21st century, we have to have incorporations and stuff like that, and the church has to be incorporated. So therefore, because it's incorporated, you have to have officers that aren't necessarily biblical officers, but once again, they didn't have to incorporate churches back in the first century. And because we incorporate now, and for the sake of all kinds of legal issues, we have to have some documents, constitutions and bylaws, and all these non-biblical things. And in those non-biblical things, our lead pastor functions as the chief executive officer over those particular situations, with kind of using the staff as officers over their particular area. So rather than to just have my hands on everything, I just kind of delegate that stuff out to, say, Vic or our children's ministry director or our youth pastor or our worship pastor. And then they kind of monitor that. And then when we have our staff meetings, we all come together, and that forms our ministerial staff. But we also include another element in that ministerial staff, so that we don't have like this elitist paid staff position and only those people are allowed into the inner circle kind of thing. So what we do is we have the ministry leadership team, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in just a few seconds, but we take that ministry leadership team of lay people in the church, good godly men who fit the qualifications of a deacon, and we take the chairperson and the vice chairperson of that ministry leadership team, and we incorporate them in our staff. So while they're serving in that position, they're an integral part of our staff and the decisions that we make, and they bring representation of the revolutionary body into that meeting. So, you know, and then they rotate off every 3 years, and we bring new people in, and that kind of ministers and brings that all the way out through everything. So that's how that works. It's important to really understand that, so that you understand how you function and how you get things processing through. The ministry leadership team, Doug is a member of our ministry leadership team, and Doug, just kind of, why don't you share with them a little bit about what you see that team as being?
The team is definitely servants, but this is definitely a set of guys that you could trust. The trust in these guys that they have in one another is just a great feeling to even know you can go to a meeting and trust a lot of folks. But these guys are friends.
It's a brotherhood.
It's a brotherhood.
Do a lot together. We go on retreats, and they actually function a very functional men's ministry called the Outdoor Revolution, and it's just a blessing. It's just probably the most functional men's group I've ever been a part of, and I'm excited to be
excited to be a part of it too, man. It's been a great experience for me, and I've really enjoyed being a part of it.
I think it's developed character in men too, because we'll bring a new person on, and over a period of time they see how this body just functions, and it really develops them. It develops character in them, and I've seen guys that come from being a new Christian to, in a very short period of time, a couple of years or so, they're serving in ministry leadership
Plugged
teams.
in and ready. I mean,
they're ready to chair things, and they're praying, and they've got a devotional life that's second to none, and I just really think God gets the glory in that. I'm blessed by these guys. Then we have the ministry leadership team. We also have specific ministry teams, and the way these specific teams work is we decide that there are certain elements that we need a group of people with their expertise to really focus in one area. And one of the teams that we have is the finance team and the personnel team. And those are really important teams. We pull them together. We find people that fit the qualifications, that have some expertise in that area, that are good, godly people, that meet the qualifications, and we put them in so that they function as an element to take care of some really responsible things, some really important things. Finance team, they just work fervently to make sure that the finances are taken care of, to protect our resources, to make sure that we're able to purchase the most that we can get with the different things, with your faithful giving. You know, we're just really blessed to have a group of people like that. These people serve 3-year terms. They rotate off. They stay off for a year before they can come back on and serve again, just to ensure that we don't have the same people year after year after year running the church and stuff like that. They select and appoint a treasurer. The finance team selects and appoint a treasurer. And anytime we feel like we need to start another ministry team, we just start one, a specific ministry team, like the men's ministry. We've selected people to kind of lead that up. The women's ministry, we've selected people to lead that up, and that's another fantastic ministry that takes place. So whenever we see that there's a need, we can put these specific teams together, and they can stay functioning as long as they need to be functioning. Right. The only thing that really stands is the finance team, the personnel team, and the ministry leadership team. And the rest of them can come and go as needed. So that's how we function with that. And then the qualifications to serve in these capacities. I think that's important. I don't think that we should put people in charge of things that haven't reached a level of leadership or a level of spiritual maturity. And one of those things is we really like to see people get involved in the church for about a year or so, that they're faithful in their attendance and faithful in different things, that they've demonstrated a knowledge in the specific area of giftedness, and that they're passionate about that. I think that's important. You need to be passionate about it, don't you, Doug?
Oh, you absolutely do. Be passionate about it, because I love the Lord. I love to see people saved. I love to hear the word preached. Yeah, you need to be very passionate about everything that you do concerning any kind of ministry. I mean, you have to have passion. It boils out of you to say, man, I want to see whatever it takes to have one person give their life to Christ. I want to do whatever it takes. Yeah. So the passion just has to come out from somewhere.
And you see, if you don't have that passion in your leadership, you can't expect that passion out of the fellowship. And so we kind of look at that. We want to make sure that they're people of responsibility. You know, they need to be supportive, and they need to be an active role, and they need to take an active role as a mission, as a revolutionary in attendance and in the biblical model of stewardship. You know, I mean, you don't want staff people that live off from the gospel that aren't being good stewards with God's word and sowing back into ministry. You don't want people on the ministry leadership team that aren't sowing back into ministry, because you know there's something about where your heart is where your treasure will be also, or where your treasure is there will your heart be also. So it's imperative that we have people with passion in the heart, and one of the ways you know that is that they're faithful in their biblical stewardship. You know, you don't want people on the finance team who are controlling the flow of the finances and the cash flow that aren't passionate about what we're doing with that ministry. So, I mean, those are just some of the elements of leadership. Leadership, we just find, is a very, very, very important part of a church process and church growth, and we're just really hoping that one day you get involved and you become a leader, and that God really starts developing you and putting you in a position where you can really revolutionize this church and revolutionize the things that we're doing in this community. Once again, we love you guys. We hope you tune in for the next video segment, and we'll talk to you then.